Hello. Welcome back to the Hello Sports Podcast with me, John Whalen, Isaac, and Colin. We are talking ball today, real ball. I don't want no potential ball history. We're talking active ball today. I want to talk about who's running the sport right now in 2026. I have got my top five active coaches. Isaac's got his top five. Colin's got his top five. And honestly, stats when it comes to these coaches do not lie. We're gonna get into it today. And I know we don't really talk about this sport, but it was my first love. My boy Chase Elliott won the race at Texas today, Sunday night.
Yeah, yeah,
Let's
I
go,
heard.
baby. Number 9. And
Hey,
before
how about
Isaac
them?
gets to,
How
and
about
before
them
you
Celtics, baby? How about
before
them
you even get to
Celtics?
before you even get to say anything, I'll give you your flowers. Congratulations to the 76ers.
Cheers,
If
cheers.
Tatum wouldn't have been hurt, it'd have been what it is. What it is.
Yeah,
I
I
ain't
got
listening to that. I ain't listening to
blowing
that, John
3-1
Whalen. No.
leads, blowing
Yeah,
3-1 leads over here.
yeah. You don't
Yeah,
have
no.
that excuse. Boston doesn't have
every
that excuse, bro. Stop that.
Everybody loves a Celtics choke job, I guess. But hey, my Braves, I can still got good things to look up forward to. Hurricanes won 3-0 last night. Braves looking like the best team in baseball. Still a good time for me to be a sports fan. Alabama's about to come in this fall and win a natty. But anyway, getting into my number 5,
You gotta chill with that. You gotta chill with that. No.
I'm gonna start with my number 5 coach. It's Kalen DeBoer. I know Bama fans are sweating. This is one of my favorite things to do. Rage bait my own fan base. Y'all are sweating. Don't even lie. Ty Simpson's gone. The offense is young. The schedule looks like Murder Row in October and November. Oh, let me go
Yeah,
through. Let me
not
go
as
through
bad as
October's
ours.
schedule.
Not as
At
bad as
Mississippi
ours.
State, Tennessee, third Saturday of October. I know when the game is. Texas A&M. And then November, we got Chattanooga in there, but other than that, it's at LSU, it's at Vanderbilt, and it's Auburn under a new system. But here's my thing. Let's be for real about DeBoer. He got that extension for a reason. He's 124-20. This is as impressive as it can get as a head coach. He's got back-to-back top 5 recruiting classes, and I think where we don't give Kalen DeBoer the credit as he deserves is because we try to compare him to Nick Saban. He's not Nick Saban. I don't care what my top 5 looks like, what either one of y'all's top 5 active coaches look like today. There's not going to be a single Nick Saban guy on there. I see Saban-like characteristics in some of these guys, but he's not Nick Saban. And we got to remember, Kalen DeBoer came into Alabama in a situation you don't want to come in. He came into Alabama following Nick Saban. He took that. One of the only guys that would step up and take that. He took that. He's brought us to a playoff. He kept us in college football playoff conversation for 2 years. He brought us to one, and this is supposed to be a rebuild. If he survives this year, that October, and the reason I named that October and that November schedule, because if he can survive that, this extension is not going to look stupid. Alabama's not going to look stupid. New quarterback, young offense, and he survived everything that's thrown at him, dog. The 124-20 record speaks for itself.
And I mean, like I said, we talked about this in a earlier episode, John Whalen. I mean, I don't have a problem with the extension. It's just the amount and the timing too. I do agree. He came off of a great season with the playoff win at Alabama. He is making progress. But I've noticed over time, especially in the pros and the collegiate level, a lot of coaches, whenever they sign these huge extensions and huge contracts, it's almost like they get content with where they're at. And it takes a special kind of coach to not get content, like the Ryan Days, like the Kurt Signettis, like the Kirby Smarts. And we're going to see whether Kalen DeBoer starts to get content with the contract that he's got, or he's going to make something of it.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
mean
that's
I was gonna say that's the interesting thing about this whole extension is Kalen DeBoer has always exceeded expectations until Alabama. So how does he handle it where you have an athletic department, boosters who are buying into you despite the fact that the expectations have not been met?
See, this is the only thing I disagree with. I think the money is needs to be there for the same plain and simple fact. Michigan was coming after him. Penn State was coming after him. He's a great coach. These teams want him. The thing about it is we need to give him the money so Michigan we can say, leave our coach alone, Michigan, leave our coach alone, Penn State. Okay. Then the years, I think the contract was written up too soon, a year too soon. I don't have a problem with the money. I don't have a problem with the years. I think the extension was written up too soon. I always say, and this is not just for Alabama coaches, I'm not trying to be hard on DeBoer, but this is me as a college football fan looking at it. When I look at a coach, I want to see a 3-year resume. We don't have that on Kalen DeBoer. We have a resume before Alabama, which is beautiful, but we don't have a 3-year resume at Alabama. And that's my thing. That's my personal opinion, my personal view. I think a solid 3 years shows you what you're going to get with a guy. And this is his 3rd year. Everybody, I don't like the thing saying this is DeBoer's guys, this is DeBoer's recruits, because the transfer portal a thing, that's not real. DeBoer's had his guys from the
I
beginning.
mean,
Few of them were saving guys. Jalen Milroe stayed is a big part of the success. He kept the team together more than DeBoer did the first year.
No,
And Jalen
no.
Milroe was a great quarterback. He just didn't
No,
fit
he
well with the
wasn't, bro.
42.
He tore him apart at the end of the day. That Oklahoma game was some of the worst quarterback play I have seen in the SEC in the last 5 years.
He didn't fit good into the DeBoer system. He did really great under Saban.
He
With Tommy
didn't do
Rees.
great under Saban.
With
He
Tommy
didn't.
Rees.
He had plenty of bad games in 23 as well.
He was one play away from the national championship. How can you
He
say
wasn't. His team was. They had a great defense that year. They were more talented across the board than Michigan when they played in that game. And Jalen Milroe, at the end of the day, didn't necessarily do anything special in that game to set himself apart.
well,
I
I
got
mean,
you.
the one
I mean,
thing that I really need to see from Kalen DeBoer at this moment is something that we haven't seen from Alabama since about 2020. I think it's the last time. We need to see 1,000-yard rusher. I'm tired of watching, and I
Yeah.
hate
Yeah.
Alabama. I can't stand Alabama. But at the end of the day, it's hard to watch Alabama football whenever they don't have 1,000-yard rusher, because there was once upon a time that every year it was guaranteed that they had that. And I feel like to be successful at a university like Alabama, you need a run game. Where does it start? It starts up front with the offensive line. So, I mean, I know they just hired their new O-line coach, but we have to see progress in those areas for me to consider Kalen DeBoer a top 5 coach.
I
But
mean, yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Colin.
when you look at DeBoer at Washington, the offensive line that he had was not that great, but still won the Joe Moore Award. And the biggest thing that creates success in the run game for Kalen DeBoer's teams is the downfield pass game. And missing that last year was their biggest issue on offense. They didn't set up the run game with the down the field pass game. And the other thing I noticed about both Milroe and Simpson, when you compare the 2 years that he had Penix at Washington, or even when he had Jake Haener at Fresno, they held on to the ball way longer than those guys. And I'm not sure if that was a quarterback issue, a kind of change needing to work on the system or what, but the bottom line is this: getting the ball out of your hands, the receivers getting open, specifically downfield, and making those plays, that's going to open up the run game for Kalen DeBoer.
Yeah, and I think that's been addressed. There's a lot of questions this year going into the season. I think the quarterback situation's a question in itself. Not really worried about that. I think we have a good problem at quarterback. But the offensive line, that's the question. Um, we've brought in a lot of new guys in the transfer portal. Kalen DeBoer went and got who he needed to get. I'm not big on Ryan Grubb. Will not be big on Ryan Grubb unless he changes my mind this season on the field.
Oh, I am.
You know, I think we need to see offensive linemen get into the second level, and we've made the moves to make that happen. And if it doesn't happen this year, then there's an issue. And I understand what you're saying, Colin. But at the end of the day, if your offensive line can't get to the second level, there's nothing that's going to create a run game. You can have any 5-star running back in the country you want back there. It's going to be hard.
I'm not disagreeing, but I felt like last year the talent, even with all the injuries and the changes that they had specifically on the interior, the talent was good enough for Alabama to be able to run the ball, period. And if they were able to throw the ball down the field last year, we would be talking about a different story with Alabama.
Sure.
I agree. I agree.
But
Like I said, I'm not a fan of Grubb or the O-line coach from last year.
going into my top 5, I got 3 honorable mentions. My three honorable mentions are Mario Cristobal, Steve Sarkisian, and Kalen DeBoer. Those are the three honorable mentions. And starting out with number five, I'm going to go with Dan Lanning. You say what you want about the playoff resume, but the odds to come in to the Big Ten in your first year and actually win the conference is pretty crazy. And guy, all he does is make the playoffs. I mean, how long has Dan Lanning been at Oregon? 4 years now, 4 or 5?
So I'm gonna.
Because his last year at
I don't
Georgia
know
was
if this is what he is
2022.
this
Yeah,
year. He's
his
going into
last
his
year was
fourth season then.
2022. Yeah, and he's only made the playoff. He's made the playoffs twice out of 3 seasons. I think his first year he missed it. But yeah, I mean, you're talking about what 66.6% or something, 2/3 of the time he's making the playoffs. That's a pretty good resume. And like I said, you can say all you want
Okay,
about his playoff resume, but the dude knows how to win.
so I'm not gonna speak too much on this because spoiler alert, I have him at number 4, and I have a stat to piggyback off you. I'm gonna let it go ahead and let Colin to give his number 5.
Well, I got Dan Lanning 5 as well. I mean, you see the consistent success, the ability to recruit. He took over Mario Cristobal's program and immediately was able to elevate it in year one, especially later in that year. And I also want to say that they were really good, 11-1 regular season, when the Pac-12 was at its best that it's been in the last 10 years of its existence. The last season of the Pac-12 was the best season we had seen since the expansion of the Pac-12. And then he goes into the Big Ten, which is also was stronger their first year of being in the Big Ten. The Big Ten was much stronger than it has ever been. So you could, he went and won that conference. The success is there. The track record's there. He beat the kings of the Big Ten, or at least the standard in the Big Ten, following Michigan's fall off in Ohio State. I think Dan Lanning is a great coach, but you're still waiting on that postseason success, the playoff success.
Okay,
That's the part we're waiting on.
so Dan Lanning, I already said it. He's my number 4. I'll go ahead and go into my number 4 since my number 4 is y'all's number 5. Um, he's building a machine in Eugene, and then people want to point to last year and point to playoff losses and the specifically, sorry, the Peach Bowl last year. But let's put this into context, and I'm glad neither one of y'all hit on it. Dan Lanning has 8 losses at Oregon in 3 years. Okay, 7 of his. Can anybody tell me what 7 of his 8 losses came from?
Teams who played in the national championship, correct?
There you go. You
Yep.
got it.
Yep.
So with Dante Moore, he's right there. He's right there. He's gonna get one. He's right there. And with Dante Moore coming back, the way they've recruited in the trenches, I'll say it right now. I might say it again in a different episode. We're still deep into the off season, but we're getting closer. We're 18 Saturdays away. Um, I think he has the best defensive line in college football this year. And that team's really physical. I think they're the most physical team in the Big Ten.
Back
And
off.
I think he's the Kirby Smart of the West. I didn't say they were
Well,
better. I
and
just said they're
and
more
the
physical than
crazy
Ohio State.
the
They're not.
crazy thing is Dan Lanning. What you got to realize about Dan Lanning, is he's pretty much flipped the identity of Oregon football. Oregon football was never about being really physical. It was about speed. We're going to get you on the outside and we're going to tear you up with speed. And that defense has kind of just made a flip to being super physical.
I mean, wouldn't you say Mario Cristobal was really the one that changed that identity first, and
I
Lanning
mean,
just piggybacked off of that?
but how many
They did play in a
like,
national title against Cam Newton.
Well,
but we've already talked about
was
that.
part of
Yeah.
that was not a physical team.
Yeah,
Like that was not
yeah.
the Oregon. Same with the one that played in Natty in 2014. They are not the modern
no.
Oregon.
No, they
Dominant
played in
on
the
the line
Natty
of
in-
scrimmage.
If you go
They
back
played in
if
the
you go
Natty in
back and
2010,
watch
not 2014.
if you go back and watch that 2014 Natty, they got completely physically dominated by Ohio State. But
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I think Mario Cristobal developed that identity, not necessarily on the defensive side of the ball, but in the trenches. I think they got a lot more
Sure,
physical
sure.
in the trenches because, Mario Cristobal was the O line coach for Alabama for the longest time.
Yeah.
But now we're starting to see that physicality to spread to, the corners, linebackers, which Dan Lanning, defensive coordinator for Georgia, was a graduate assistant at Alabama underneath Kirby Smart. He's kind of adopted that identity of we're not only going to be physical in the trenches, but everywhere else on the field as well. So,
Yeah, that's why I call him the Kirby Smart of the West. That's
yeah,
exactly who he is.
absolutely. But my number
I'm
4,
telling
I
you
kind of
right
went.
now, if Kalen DeBoer got fired, go after Dan Lanning. He's a young guy.
He
We'll
won't
talk about it.
leave for Alabama. He'll
Good, Isaac.
like if like I said, if you offered him a big enough
Maybe
bag,
Georgia.
the all maybe Georgia, but yeah. But going into my number 4, and I'm probably gonna get a lot of hate for this because this is not a very likable team at the moment. But Marcus Freeman with Notre Dame. I mean, they could never get over the hump with Brian Kelly. Guy comes in. You can say what you want about big time games in the regular season, but that 2024 push for the national championship obviously lost to Ohio State. But I think it's very underappreciated the teams that he played. A lot of people forget that that was a tough, disciplined Penn State team. I know they had a fall off the next year, but that Penn State team was very good. And yeah, I just think that Marcus Freeman knows how to win, especially in the postseason if he gets the opportunity to play there.
Okay, so Marcus Freeman, honorable mention for me, not in my top 5. And the biggest reason why, well, there's a couple of reasons, but the biggest reason why is the early season blunders that we have seen. Remember, he lost to Northern Illinois early in the year. I believe it was week 2 of the season in 24, the year they made the Natty. But then they also opened up the season losing 2 games to Miami and A&M, both playoff teams. I get that. But the problem is when that defense looked as bad as it did with what they had coming back. Because if you remember from the year before, they did have to play Christian Gray. They had to play Leonard Moore young. And the big reason why was because Benjamin Morrison was not healthy. The only thing in the back end that they really had to replace was Xavier Watts. They had a good front 7 as well that was returning, and the defense with Chris Ash did not mesh early. They were ill-prepared then. They were ill-prepared against Northern Illinois. They were ill-prepared when they came to Columbus in Freeman's first year, and then they lost to Marshall after that too. The early season blunders mixed with the thing that he gets a stamp for is making the national championship. He beat Indiana, who has never been there before that. And they were not last year's version of Indiana. Then they beat Georgia in Gunnar Stockton's first ever start. The offense looked terrible and the drops were a huge issue in that game. And then they beat Penn State, who did not have a catch from a single receiver. You can give Notre Dame credit to a certain extent for that, but Penn State had bigger issues when it came to that type of game before Notre Dame. Much before Notre Dame. So that's why I left Marcus Freeman off my list with consideration.
Here's my thing.
That's reasonable. It's reasonable.
I'm about to rage bait a lot of people. I'm about to make a lot of people mad.
Here's a hot take.
What is Marcus Freeman done? And I don't like Brian Kelly. You can watch the previous episodes. But what is what has Marcus Freeman done that Brian Kelly hasn't? Brian Kelly got them to the national championship. Brian Kelly got them to multiple playoffs.
I'll take this one first, Vosh.
Brian Kelly won the ACC.
I think that Marcus Freeman, as first off, he's had more success. I think that he's had more success because, let's be honest, with a schedule, because they made the national championship, the BCS Bowl. What year with Brian Kelly? I forget that. I know they played Bama.
2012.
2012. That's what I thought. I get that, but if you go back, like I said, the schedules back then, especially for Notre Dame, weren't like terribly difficult, just like they are now. I mean, you have big games on the schedule, and also I believe that with Notre Dame scheduling and how they schedule their games, with 2 or 3 big games and then the rest of it is relatively easier. I think that it's harder to make a 12 team playoff and push to the national championship than what Brian Kelly did. That's my first point. My second point is I think the culture that Marcus Freeman has set up at Notre Dame is much more desirable than what Brian Kelly has set up at Notre Dame.
I'll agree with the culture statement because nobody's ever played for Brian Kelly said they like playing for Brian Kelly.
Well, and here's the other thing too. I don't want to gloss over this. Brian Kelly used the academic prestige of Notre Dame as a huge excuse for why they couldn't get talent in the board, and recruiting was not elevated. Now under Marcus Freeman, no excuses, get to work. Their recruiting has elevated beyond what Brian Kelly has done, plus being able to leverage the transfer portal. And let's just be honest about this too. I mean, if you want to talk about a guy in Marcus Freeman who aced it with a lot of hires, when Tommy Rees left, and he kind of didn't want Tommy Rees there in the first place, being a son of Notre Dame, a former starting quarterback for Notre Dame right before that national championship appearing team. He ended up hitting out the park with getting Mike Denbrock and pried him away from Brian Kelly. So it shows that Mike Denbrock even, and to me he has a lot of credibility, chose the program that Marcus Freeman was running over the program that Brian Kelly was running. So he definitely, and he's a lot younger of a coach, got a lot of time in front of him. He's definitely showing very early on in his career that he could certainly be a better coach and has been a better coach early than Brian Kelly.
Yeah, I agree with that. Being a young guy today in the NIL and transfer portal era of college football is a big deal. It's one of the things I like about Dan Lanning, and I can agree with that about Marcus Freeman, but I'm not ready to have him in my top 10 yet.
And like I said, that's understandable. I just valued the 12 team playoff push that he made probably a little bit more than most people. So
My number 4 coach in the sport right now is a guy we've already talked about a lot. It's Kalen DeBoer. When you're talking about Kalen DeBoer, I feel like the expectations of having to replace the GOAT, Nick Saban, blinds a lot of people from his success before, and it was quick. It hit the nation like a train. Okay, so he took over a situation after Jimmy Lake just had Washington a complete mess and instantly elevated them 11-2 in year one and very competitive. And he did beat Oregon and Dan Lanning. And then he beat him twice en route to the college football playoff, in which he got to a national championship. There are not very many active coaches that we're going to put in this conversation, like Marcus Freeman and Dan Lanning, who went to a national championship. They didn't go. And Kalen DeBoer did, and he did not have the resources when he did that a lot of these other coaches have. He did not have the same resources as Dan Lanning, and he beat him head to head, 3-0 head to head. Got to give him credit there.
Yeah, see, the only reason I'm gonna be 100% honest. First of all, I have one thing to say: Roll Tide, Nick Saban, cold beer, come on. But second of all, I was trying to be unbiased by putting Dan Lanning ahead of Kalen DeBoer. But realistically, I could see Kalen DeBoer. I mean, Kalen DeBoer's record against Dan Lanning is perfect. I mean, so realistically, Kalen DeBoer deserves to be in front of that Dan Lanning. Neither one of them have a national title, and Kalen DeBoer has a national title appearance.
Yeah, but I mean, if you do look at these guys, I think the big difference is, though, Lanning's been a winner. DeBoer was a winner at a higher clip. And now being at Alabama, a little bit of a shaky-ish start, but still being shaky. 9 wins and then 11 wins.
20 and 8.
I'll say this:
20 and 8
it's shaky. It's shaky for Alabama standards.
Yeah.
For regular standards, that's really good.
His record is 20 and 8 in 2 years.
All right, who you got for number 3, John?
Yeah,
Whalen?
we got number 3. This is going to be a good conversation.
Number 3, Signetti. All right, let me start bragging on him before y'all tell me I put him too low. If y'all told me 2 years ago a coach from Indiana would be on my list anywhere on the top 5, I would have checked myself in a mental clinic. What Signetti just did, a 16-0 national championship run at Indiana, it's the greatest turnaround in history for the FBS. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Taking Indiana from the poverty they were to a 16-0 national champion, it's the greatest turnaround in FBS history. And his record at Bloomington is 27-2. He don't just win games; he broke the Big Ten. And the only reason I have him is 3 because he has to show me he can sustain it. I understand he sustained it at JMU, but just sustaining success at JMU and Indiana are 2 different things. We've seen coaches be able to sustain success at Group of 5 schools and not Power 4 schools. We've seen that before. He's 65 years old. How many years does he have to sustain success? Nick Saban was in his 70s when he retired,
I
early
mean,
70s.
he's got 8 years on his contract left?
And
8 or 9? I know he
maybe
signed a 10-year deal.
maybe Indiana can go to back. I don't see him being there the whole 10 years. And maybe Indiana can go back to back. Maybe they can win multiple national champions in that 10 years. But we know, we all can agree on this. We're not going to see many dynasties in this era of college football. We're not going to see a dynasty, hardly ever.
Well, sure, but the thing about what Signetti was able to do is you could talk about the portal and everybody wants to jump on the portal, but at the end of the day, you look at the blue chip ratio that they had last year. I believe they only had 5 4-stars and 0 5-stars last year. This guy did the impossible. You want to say he broke the Big Ten? He broke college football, because I remember a time when you were told that you had to have over a 50% blue chip ratio, and Michigan was slightly below that threshold when they won it, and Michigan was like, yeah, see, we're an exception over here. We just work harder. Oh, brother. If you want to talk about exceptional, the run that Indiana had with those guys and the talent that they had and how they developed their players, but also being able to keep the staff continuity together shows you the buy-in here. So I don't think Kurt Signetti is the third best coach in the sport. Just a little teaser.
I guess I don't either, boss. We're gonna go with number 3. Boss might be a little angry at me, but I got Ryan Day. Ryan Day is at my 3, and it's once you get to this top 3, it's like splitting hairs. It comes really close, and I think that the one thing that's holding Ryan Day back for me personally is his record, and Boss is going to hate this, his record against Michigan. That rivalry, especially to Ohio State and Michigan fans, it really does mean more. And I'm not one to say, oh, that national championship was Mickey Mouse. I do think that it was one of the toughest national championships to get to with Ohio State's route. They had to play some really good teams like Tennessee in the first round of the playoffs, like Texas, like Notre Dame. And I think that the losses to Michigan, especially in a crucial game like that, I have to put him at 3 for me.
I think the big thing about Ryan Day when you're talking about the game is just so much different, and I think that it takes a lot of adjusting to really understand it, put yourself completely in it. And I think Ryan Day kind of had a hard time adjusting to it. When he got blindsided in 21, when we lost to them, they were the better team. That was really the one year where I was kind of like, yeah, I get this. I mean, 23, I didn't expect to win, but we were in position to win that game. Losing to them 3 years in a row, that pressure and the talk about toughness and all this made Ryan Day convinced that to beat Michigan, you had to beat them a certain way. You had to beat them at their own game. When Ohio State, at the end of the day, all under Urban Meyer, the 7-0, and he lost sight of this, the 7-0 stretch that Urban Meyer had, he did not play anybody else's style, and Michigan couldn't keep up. He has kind of figured that out, but part of the identity of Ohio State has shifted, and part of the identity of Ryan Day has shifted to more of an NFL style efficiency type of offense and defense, and it worked really well. It worked really well. When's the last time Ohio State didn't score a touchdown in the game? Because Michigan couldn't do that this past year. I think Ryan Day got that monkey off his back. I think he got the national championship monkey off his back, which is why I have Ryan Day higher than Kirby Smart. I have Kirby Smart at 3. And the biggest reason why is seeing how those two coaches adjusted with the NIL and transfer portal era. One adjusted way better than the other. And one has the type of pedigree to where when you lose a coordinator that was a former NFL coach, you go and replace him with another one. I mean, That's exactly what keeps happening, right? Chip Kelly left and they ended up promoting Brian Hartline because frankly he would have been out the door a year earlier if we didn't. That experiment didn't go great, but you have the type of pedigree where you can get another former NFL head coach and Arthur Smith to come in. And Matt Patricia, former NFL head coach, coached offense and defense at the NFL level. Having that type of respect from the NFL and then the back-to-back years with the most draft picks, his work shows. So I gave you 2 and 3 right there. Ryan Day is better than Kirby Smart right here, right now. And I know the 2 national championships don't indicate that. Well, guess what? Who's more likely to win more national championships in the future? It's definitely Ryan Day.
All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and give my number 2 as long as Isaac doesn't have nothing to piggyback off of that, and I'm not gonna piggyback off of that because of who my number 2 is. My number 2 is Ryan Day. Come on, caller. OHIO. Come on, say it. Look. I knew the Michigan point was going to be brought up, but really, honestly, who cares unless you're a Michigan fan? I know Ohio State fans care. It's the second biggest rivalry in college football, and we don't piggyback off that because that's an argument for another day. But look at his winning percentage. He's coming off a massive back year. He's putting together great recruiting class after great recruiting class after great recruiting class. He's a national champion. And look, I'll give Indiana their flowers. I had Kirk Cignetti at 3, but Cignetti doing what he did just put a massive chip on Ryan Day's shoulder. And look out for what's coming to come with Ryan Day. He's number 2. He's solid. After Urban Meyer left, I was a little worried about what Ohio State would do. I thought we would see a fall off, and Ryan Day has done just as good of a job as Urban Meyer, if not better. It was hard for me as a big Urban Meyer watcher as a kid to say better, but I just got that nostalgia behind it. But it could be better.
It's definitely better.
And here's this year played a huge factor where I ranked Ryan Day to. Because after watching the draft and after watching how they went out this year, I understand some people might get angry at me for saying this, but I don't think that I don't think that there is a world that we live in that people would think it's okay to not go to a national championship game whenever you have 6 first rounders. We saw
No,
McDonald.
We had 4.
Was McDonald in the first round?
Yeah.
Okay, so we had McDonald, Caleb Downs, Arvell Reese, Sonny Styles, Carnell. 5 first rounders, potential top 5, maybe even number 1 pick in Jeremiah Smith, Julian Sayin, who we can go back and forth on this because I've said some things about Julian Sayin, but the completion percentage was there. You had all these pieces in place that were playing so good, and at the end of the day, you didn't make it to a national championship. You lost in your first game. I think that yes, to a certain extent, they were in the playoffs. They got a first round bye. Kudos. That's a great season. But you had so many things going into those playoffs that it's okay, why did we lose that game against Miami? We didn't really have a reason to. And that might just be
out of all the draft picks that Ohio State had, were any of them starting offensive linemen?
That's a good point, but how many?
No, in general.
It's a good point, but how many offensive linemen did you have declare, Bosch? Because I don't know the answer to this question. I'm just wondering. But that would
because they were a young group last year.
Okay.
It was one of the bigger concerns on the team. We played a natural guard at tackle. The only one that got drafted, by the way, Ethan Onyanwa, was based on his film at Rice and his athleticism, but he clearly was not good enough, and that's why he didn't play for Ohio State. He didn't play. And we bring back 4 of 5 on the offensive line. It should obviously be elevated, but the only reason we lost to both Miami and Indiana was because of the O-line play. You can blame Julian Sayin all you want. He wasn't the issue. You can blame the play calling all you want. That wasn't even the issue. It was simply the O-line play. And my theory is it's because Justin Frye, our old offensive line coach, and Buckeye fans, we have discussions about this, arguments about this all the time. He didn't recruit well enough. He developed great when he was here. He did a great job with the 24 team. he didn't recruit well enough and he didn't leave the room in a better spot than when he took it over. And that's your job as a coach. So you got to face reality here. We got to hope that Tyler Bowen is good enough there. And having one weakness on a team is not unusual, but to be able to go 12-0 even with that weakness and that weakness not being exposed until later, you know what? You get a pass, especially when you beat your rival for the first time in 4 years and you're coming off of a national championship. Back-to-back national championships, never been done in the school's history.
And I'll
And let's
I wanna kind of rebuttal that a little bit. So I think that yes, your O line was not the greatest, Bosh. I get that, but part of it does have to deal with play calling, and I want us to think about this. Early in the season this year, Texas, what was their issue that we noticed versus Florida and all these other teams that they were playing? Their offensive line, especially in pass pro, was not very good. And part of that was that Steve Sarkisian, what does he like to do on the offensive side of the ball? He likes to draw up these long, drawn up plays that take a little time to develop, and the O line was not suited for that. Well, about midway through the season, you started seeing Texas switch over to more of an RPO, get the ball out fast kind of mentality because their offensive line was not very great. And obviously they went on to win three top 10 games in their season. So I mean, yes, your offensive line was not very great, but at the same time, there was a lot of play calling things that could have been better to help that.
there's so much.
Well, go
Go
ahead.
ahead. Okay,
I was,
appreciate it. Okay, I'll go ahead. I'll let you go next. But back to I want to hit on the Texas thing. Yeah, Texas did. They changed their offense up. They got better as the season went on. Had a loss to Florida, who we know they shouldn't have lost to. And let's be honest, that's why they didn't make the playoffs. A loss to Georgia at Sanford Stadium and a loss to Ohio State, which I believe that game, yeah, it had to be played in
It was in
Ohio.
Columbus. It was in Columbus,
Yeah,
yeah.
it was at Ohio State because it's at Texas this year. Those are not playoff. Those losses right there are not going to kick you out of the playoffs. And the fact that they beat Texas A&M, should they have been a playoff team? That's a discussion for a different day. But they beat them at the end of the regular season. The only reason Texas was not in this playoff is because of that early loss to Florida and them early struggles. That's the beauty of college football. And I will say this over and over and over. This the journey that gets you to the playoffs, week in and week out. That's what I love about college football. But to the Ohio State thing, you know, they were loaded with talent. Carnell Tate would have been a wide receiver one on any team in college football this year. I don't care what Malik Neighbors says. He doesn't know what he's talking about. I would start Carnell Tate over Malik Neighbors in college. Let's be honest. But
I don't know about that, man.
but
I don't think he's
to the
wrong.
second point with the Miami loss, Ohio State losing to Miami. What won Miami all those playoff games? Because you wasn't in here when we were talking about call quarterbacks. That's when Sean filled in for you. That was the only episode you missed. But I'm pretty sure you feel the same way we do about Carson Beck. And if you don't, you can rebuttal me. But Carson Beck, it's a bomb. I'm not going to spend too
I
much time talking about Carson Beck.
I'll just answer, right here briefly. I think Carson Beck gets a lot of hate that is coming from a place of not like talking strictly football, but almost
Mhm.
like an identity hate. Like we hate Carson Beck because instead of doing what he said entering the draft, he chased the bag, and I think that's where a lot of the hate
So
comes from. But we can talk about his game on another day.
what I will say about Carson Beck, he's a winner. But at the same time, he was a winner with great Georgia defense. And what won Miami those games in the playoffs was Miami's defensive line alone. They had the best defensive line in the country. No doubt about it. Reuben Bain, I don't care. NFL scouts, if you think everybody that passed on him because they think he's going to be a bust, look at all the talented defensive linemen that's had short arms. Come on, let's not look too deep into this.
Shout out to
But
DeMarcus Ware.
he's one of them. Good pull. What a pull.
Mhm.
But okay, Carson Beck was a one read guy. He was a one read guy. Once that read wasn't there, that's when we've seen the inconsistency in his passes. He's very accurate, but he panics in the pocket when his first read's not there. Okay, so Ohio State being weak on the offensive line and Miami strength being the defensive line, which helped them even beat a great offense like Ole Miss, one of the best offenses we've seen in college football this year. I think that's where their strength was Ohio State's weakness, and that day the ball just bounced right for Miami. Carson Beck did they called a very good game where Carson Beck couldn't afford to make mistakes.
And I just think like obviously you can talk about the not being able to have foresight with what happened on the offensive line in that game, but if you go back and watch that game, and Buckeye fans know this, Austin Saraveld, who should be playing guard, he should not be playing left tackle. He got benched or hurt or whatever the fake story is. I think he got benched for Ian Moore. And Ian Moore came in and our O-line played better and our offense moved the ball better and more consistently and we scored and we made it a game. And it was a 3-point game when we were down 14-0 going in the locker room. It was 17-14 until late in the fourth quarter. I think a lot of people overlook the adjustment that Ohio State staff made in that game, how they gave themselves a chance to win that one. It was just a little too late. And also, too, don't forget, the ball bounced right back into Malachi Tony's hands, not once but twice when Caleb Downs stripped him. So that's when you know it's not your day because the ball's bouncing their way.
Malachi Tony's a dog too, but so is Caleb Downs. He's a defensive leader. He can play dime, he can play safety, he can play linebacker. But sorry I went on that rant a while ago. Y'all were just hitting on so many topics that I wanted to put my 2 cents in. But who's on number 2? Is it my turn to say my number 2?
Is it no, you said Ryan Day, which is what got us onto this. Yeah.
Yeah, I've already said mine.
Yeah, okay. So my number 2, a lot of people are gonna be mad at me for this too. Kurt Cignetti. Kurt Cignetti's my number 2. The turnaround at Indiana, like you said earlier, John Whalen, one of the greatest turnarounds in college football history. Ridiculous. Taking the all-time losingest program to a national championship in your second year is crazy. The fact that Kurt Cignetti is not slowed down, especially in the recruiting trail and the transfer portal. Did they finish with the number 1 class in the transfer portal for football this year?
LSU did.
No, I think
you might be right.
Okay, yeah. I think number 1 or number 2, they were top 2 transfer portal class this year. And I mean, like there's 5-star names out there that Indiana's now on the radar that we've never seen before. I don't think Indiana actually has ever landed a commitment from a 5-star player in the ranking history of high school players coming out. So I think the turnaround is generational, and honestly, it's kind of an assumption pick at number 2. Just because I look at where the trajectory of these head coaches are lined up with their recent success and stuff like that. And I think that Kurt Cignetti here in maybe the next 5 years could possibly be number 1, and it wouldn't shock me at all. But for now, I'm going to have him at number 2.
That's fair. Well, I kind of already said mine. I have Ryan Day at number 2, and we've talked about that for a while, so we could just say who we have as the best coach in the sport.
Right. Here I go. What's that coming down the track? It's the Mean Machine in the red and black. Give me Kirby Smart. I mean, look.
John, dude, you got to be quiet. You're going to get a speeding ticket.
Look, I mean, that's the only thing negative I can say about Kirby Smart, honestly. He can't keep his players under control off the field. And Georgia fans, please come at me for this. Please. Because anybody that's not a Georgia fan will tell you it's a Kirby Smart player. Okay? You don't see Ryan Day's players historically going to jail. You never seen Nick Saban's players going to jail and him having them play on Saturday. You don't see Dan Lanning's players going to jail. You don't see Lane Kiffin's players going to jail. You don't see it. Okay? I'm sure some troll that some casual's going to come in the comments when this clip gets posted on TikTok and be like, oh, but Dre Kirkpatrick went to jail under DeBoer. What did he do? Suspend him the whole season. And guess what? Who else have we seen disrespect DeBoer off the field? With all the negative out of the way about Kirby Smart, because he's not perfect, but with all the negative coming out of Kirby Smart, he's the standard of college football. He is the standard right now.
No.
Everybody else is trying to figure out transfer portal, and he's just winning and stacking 5 stars. Has he adjusted to NIL and transfer portal the best? No, but he's still winning without using it. Where we look at Dabo Swinney, who 10 years ago, or not even 5 years ago, probably would have been on this list, but because he went into the transfer portal and NIL era so poorly and handled it so poorly, we're not even going to talk about him. But he's winning 12 games a year like it's a hobby. Let's not act like he hasn't been winning 12 games a year for a good couple of years now. He's the only guy who stayed at the mountaintop out of this list. He's been at the mountaintop for over a decade until somebody knocks him off his throne. He's the final boss of college
And
football. And if you need any more proven points, how many natties does he got compared to these other two?
I'll say
so just
hold on
natties in
hold
the
on
past.
I'll say this, Bosch. I do have Kirby as number one as well, and I wanted to make some different points other than John Whalen. The reason I have Kirby at my number one is first off the sheer dominance that he showed in the SEC since he's been in. This guy is going on 2 in a row, might make it 3 in a row this year of SEC championships. He's proven at a top two conference that he can dominate it. And say what you want about the 12 team playoff and stuff like that. But a lot of people forget he did go back to back in a 14 playoff. I don't necessarily think that the 12 team is a whole lot more difficult than a 14 playoff, especially with the potent aspect of the 14 playoff, because I do really feel like you're getting your four best teams in that playoff. And I feel like the 12 team is kind of watered down just a tad bit. But yeah, he's just consistently winning, like John Whalen said. And like I said, we can talk about the 12 team playoff performances and stuff like that. But I mean, the dude took, I think a lot of people forget this. The dude took one of the worst wide receiver rooms that we've seen in a while with dropped passes and took them to a playoff appearance. And I believe also won an SEC championship with that squad. So I think that that's super impressive.
I mean, don't get me wrong, it's impressive, but not nearly on the same radar as Ryan Day and Kurt Signetti and what they've been able to do. My number one is Kurt Signetti. Nobody has ever had a more impressive 2-year stretch as a head coach than Kurt Signetti has had. It is much harder to win at Indiana than it is to win at Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, anywhere, for the most part. So he was able to do it. Losing his program in college football, he was able to do it. And the other part, too, when we're getting hung up about this Kirby Smart stuff, is you could talk about the SEC championship and that, look, it's impressive. I'm not saying it's not, but you got to look at that year. That year with all the tiebreakers that went into it, or even if there weren't tiebreakers, what are the odds that in a 16-team conference, 6-2 in conference is still good enough for you to go? He's snuck his way into back-to-back SEC championships. He backdoored his way into back-to-back SEC championships.
Yeah, because
he should have lost to Georgia Tech, by the way, which would have made it a win and in situation against Texas. Should have lost to Georgia Tech. The officials were horrible. The officials were horrible down the stretch of that game. And
how many overtimes that game go in? That was a great game.
Seven or eight. Crazy. So, and look, losing to Georgia Tech wouldn't have been a huge problem. I hope Isaac gets back here, by the way. But the thing is that level of dominance and that standard of college football that you're trying to make it out to be, he has not been that through the last 3 years. He has not been that through transfer portal and NIL. They're you know, we want to talk about this. There was basically an admission to them paying players before it was legal. I could promise you we weren't doing that. I know we weren't doing that. So why is it now like, yeah, we had handshake agreements that we were going to do it and not tell anybody?
I don't want to chase that rabbit too much, but I see the routes you're going down. But let's look at this. I'm going to break down my list for a second. The elephant in the room right now that you're bringing up is the Big Ten is more competitive than the SEC in the last couple of years.
I mean, Kirby said it.
Yes, yeah. And Kirby did say it, and I'm glad we're bringing that up because that interview is very, very relevant. But I've looked at NIL, I've looked at transfer portal, but quite honestly, me doing these top 5 active coaches today has kind of changed my outlook on it. I'm not saying the SEC is any less competitive than the Big Ten, and I won't go as far to say they're a worse conference. But if I look at my list alone, and you don't have to remind me of yours, but I have 5 guys. 3 of them came from the Big Ten, 2 of them came from the SEC. The level of coaching's better. I mean, let's be honest. it used to be Ohio State, and it used to be Urban Meyer.
Yeah.
Okay, now we got Ryan Day, who has picked up where Urban Meyer left off and probably exceeded that. We got Dan Lanning, who I think maybe if we have this conversation 5 years down the road, he might be number one on our list. He's just got to get over that hump. And I feel like once he gets over that hump, there'll be no issues. And we got Signetti, who a year ago we probably wouldn't have talked about, but here we are. I mean, what Signetti's came down and I said destroy the whole Big Ten. You said destroy all of college football. I mean, so you look at that, these three guys can go get a job anywhere they want right now. I think the coach is better. I'm going to be honest. Because look at the high school talent. It's in the South. If you look per capita, the high school talent's all in the South. Why is the Southeastern Conference not able to get guys out of the Southeast? Why is every Alabama player that has potential transferring to Ohio State? I literally feel like y'all pick literally like, okay, we wasn't able to recruit this guy. Let's go see what Alabama gets like. No, that's not the case, but you gotta look at it from my perspective. Why is that? It's because the development's better in the Big Ten right now. And I don't think that has anything to do with NIL or transfer portal. I mean, yes, it's a thing,
Yeah.
but let's look at coaches that can develop in the SEC versus coaches that can develop in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I think if you're just going down a list and just adding depth to coach rankings, guys like Kyle Whittingham are
At
going to
Michigan.
be on people's lists in the top 10 at
He's at my
Michigan
10
now.
spot. He's my 10 spot.
He's higher for me than that, but not by a lot though. I mean, that's not unjustifiable, but you still see it with like a guy like Kirk Ferentz, the longest tenured coach in college football. Lincoln Riley, quarterback whisperer, offensively at the very least, you're going to get developed over there. So ultimately, there's a lot of depth when it comes to these coaches in the Big Ten, and there also is in the SEC. Look, the SEC is not easy. It's not a pushover, but quite honestly, I don't frankly care about what Josh Pate has to say. I think Ohio State, I have not seen a tougher schedule than what Ohio State has this year. I have not yet seen a schedule in my life or in my memory that Ohio State's ever had that was tougher than this. So at the end of the day, it's a gauntlet in both conferences. It's just a matter of who's going to be able to adjust to the times better to set up their team better to win later in January. That's the real difference right now. And the Big Ten has the SEC beat right now.
I mean, it's a conversation that can go on forever and ever because the SEC does have the draft picks. The Big Ten has the natties. So what? I mean, why is the SEC having the draft picks and not winning the natties? Why are we not? So why are we seeing less Big Ten players go to the NFL than SEC players? But that should be changing too with what we've seen with Ohio State. But Alabama still had. They had Caden Proctor, Ty Simpson. I think we only had maybe two. I hope I'm not missing one. I really hope I'm not.
I don't think you are. I'm not thinking of one either.
But we still had two first rounders. I mean, how many schools can really say they had two first rounders? And we've been consistent for years and years with that. And I mean, Ohio State had a lot of first rounders, but I mean, I don't understand it. I don't get it. I think the Big Ten has just looked better come playoff time. And I don't know why. I think the coaching might be better in the Big Ten, honestly. I think that's what it comes down to.
Yeah. That's a big difference between the two, and specifically at the top, which is why the top is separated, and you're getting some of that admission from SEC people, but they're still going to say that the depth, the Mississippi States, the Arkansas, Kentuckies, etc., like it's so hard to play there that it's taxing. You can make the argument. I hear it as excuses. When you see Ohio State's schedule at the end of the day for this upcoming year, nobody wants to play that. Nobody does at all.
Well, the Big Ten, I think Big Ten teams get discredited a little bit with their Iowas, their Illinois, their Northwesterns. There is a bad bottom in the Big Ten, but it's how many teams in that conference? It's like the biggest conference in college
18.
football. 18. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But you got Northwestern, who I like the moves that Northwestern's been making. They're looking scary. Illinois is going to look scary good. They have for a couple years. Iowa, but they came in and did. People were arguing for Vanderbilt to be in the playoffs. They came in and embarrassed Diego Pavia, and for some reason, the Ravens still thought it was a good idea to sign him to a 3-year deal. 3 years. I mean, I know that's the minimum rookie contract, but my gosh. But yeah,
And I
I
just
do.
want to say this too, to piggyback off of that. For those of you saying bowl games don't matter, they don't matter to programs like yours, Alabama, and they don't matter to us, quite frankly, if it's not associated with the playoff, because that expectation is there. Places like Vanderbilt and Iowa, Illinois and Tennessee, those examples that I've used to help really what it is for me personally is like I cannot stand when SEC fans want to downplay how good the middle of the conference really is. We make Illinois look worse than they are. We make Iowa look worse than they are. And Iowa was really competitive last year too. Tennessee and Vanderbilt are not national championship contenders year in and year out. And unfortunately we don't have Isaac over here to talk about it. They care about ending the season on the right note. They definitely do.
Yeah.
And Vanderbilt cared about winning that game to send their guys off on the right foot after feeling like they got snubbed out of the playoff.
I tell you
They
though,
did.
I'm gonna tell you this about Vanderbilt, and I'm gonna wrap it on up. Clark Lee, I like what he's doing at the program.
Yes.
Vanderbilt may take a small step back just because of how competitive the SEC is, but I can say the same thing for Kurt Signetti. I don't see them going 12-0 again. I don't. Now, I'm pretty sure they got Oregon and Ohio State and Michigan on that schedule.
I don't think they play Oregon, but
They got
they
Ohio State and Michigan, I think.
pretty sure they do.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I just don't see them going undefeated in that schedule again. And honestly, they're not my favorites to win the Big Ten. If I had to pick, if I had to pick my Big Ten championship today, and this will be a hot take to end the episode with, I got Oregon and Ohio State in the Big Ten championship. But unless you want to piggyback up that, I'm gonna wrap it up.
No, I'm all good.
All right. So appreciate y'all watching the episode, listening to the episode on Spotify, watching it on YouTube. Please leave a like on YouTube and try to leave 5 stars on Spotify. It helps push us out tremendously. The support, even the negative comments I got is really, 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 I love it all. Just keep it all coming. If you disagree with any of our top fives, please let us know. If you hate our top fives, let us know. We want to hear it. And make sure you follow our social media accounts. We post clips daily. We got TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. And, we also do individual content, and we work really, really hard with our individual content, is all.
Yeah.
Isaac's no longer here in the episode, but his TikTok handle is Balls by 50 Network. Mine is my name, John Wayland Hollis. Collins is Bosch CFB. I got that right? It's Bosch CFB, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I forgot for a second. But yeah, thank y'all for enjoying the episode. Toodles.
Well, goodbye.